Someone wants to start first in introducing themselves.
I think it should be you, to be honest with you.
I was
Your
about to
your
say,
your name is the
I was
name,
thinking
you
like,
know.
let's do age or like rock, paper, scissors or something.
No, I'll just say it's you, bro.
yeah, you're good, you're good.
Oh, I'm always like rubbish at this. I always see, when you get like staff training events and it's like, tell us two truths and a lie or something like that. And I'm always
I know
like,
lies is right. Just
um, so my name is Mohammed. So I do my whole like, got my name like Mohammed Usman. Um, Currently I work as an assistant psychologist within the NHS. Inshallah, I do plan on becoming a trainee clinical psychologist in September. Don't know how I got there, but I'm there. Um, Interestingly, I'm one of, two brown men on the course, which is unknown of in psychology, but whatever. I guess we're here now. Um, so I kind of joined the network. Sometime earlier this year. I saw it kind of advertised on LinkedIn and I saw the courses kind of being done and have just gravitated a bit towards Islamic psychology and kind of bringing culturally adapted models in my professional work. Um, wasn't really there for the kind of peer support and the support given to Muslims, but it was more kind of theoretical. And then I got kind of more involved in the network and having these conversations with some of the other coaches and stuff and I got really more interested in what the actual network is here for to do. Um, so my kind of understanding with the network is that we are, how to define what the network is doing? The network's kind of having that space and that support for Muslims who suffer with mental health problems, the whole array of it, whether no matter what it is, no matter what diagnosis it is, but just bringing all these people together to kind of give that peer support. Maybe it's not solution focused. We're not here to kind of treat people, we're just here to kind of facilitate a space where people can actually be comfortable and be gain a bit more confidence in knowing what's going on with them and how to navigate that with their religion, with their life, with their culture, um, and kind of bringing together people of kind of different levels of faith or people at different points in their kind of religious journey. That's something kind of a value that's quite close to me because, my kind of what's the what's the word I'm looking for? My the point in my religious journey has kind of been very up and down, very, very down for the first kind of portion of my life. But alhamdulillah, now it's a bit more kind of like, oh, a bit more of a straight trajectory. I kind of know where I'm going. I kind of know where my feet are placed. And it's really helped, um, with how I deal with mental health for myself and then for a lot of my clients and service users and patients, whatever you want to call them. And I kind of do want to share that with a lot of people. So I joined the network. Here I am.
thank
Love
you.
that, love that, love that.
Back. What um what was the for you? Was there like a point where you kind of said you saw the work that was being done? Was there something specific that just made you think like, yes, I need to be directly involved?
It was honestly, I saw the course that I think Mohammed Rajad was doing, and I found that very interesting because I've never seen anything like that before. Any type of cultural inclusion in your work or cultural practices or, cultural adaptations of some fancy psychological theoretical model was always very brief, very much like nothing comprehensive, but his was quite in depth, and the kind of links he was making and like the way he was bringing in Islamic knowledge and teaching hadiths and stuff was very interesting to me. And then it wasn't until I think I had the initial conversation to join as a volunteer, um, where they were kind of sharing their own stories with me, and I kind of had that space, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really nice! Like, I feel really good
Mm,
about this, because they're sharing their story, and I got to share my story, and I've never kind of really spoke about that before. Despite working in mental health since I was 18, so it's been many, many years. Um, so it was really nice. It was kind of like relieving, and I've never been in that spot where it's kind of that relief is there, that I've kind of had that nice feeling. I've had that time for myself and that time to hear someone's story in a very kind of non-clinical way, because obviously I work very clinically. And it was just
mm,
it was a really nice conversation. I felt quite good about it after, and I thought this is kind of where I want to be involved. And they told me the plans that they had for the network, and I thought this is kind of where I want to be. I was doing something similar already. So I was working for this company, Overcome, and what they do is they give free mental health coaching to anyone in the world. Anyone can sign up. The idea is that they can kind of support you, but no kind of comprehensive treatment for any kind of clinical diagnosis of mental health conditions. So I was working for them, and yeah, I thought like this is something that really aligns with what I want to do for my career, for my future, for kind of extracurricular activities. It's what I want to do in terms of where I want to be in my faith. I think it's really um, beneficial. There's the hadith and stuff that say, not hadith, there's a part in the Quran that says, if you save one life, it's like saving the whole of humanity. And, who doesn't want to save the whole of humanity? Like, come on now. So that's,
Wow.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um, I guess I should ask myself the same question of why I'm here. I think that's kind of where we'll start, right? That makes a lot of sense. So, a bit about me and how I became aware of the network. Um, I didn't really come across the network of my own accord. Our brother here came across me. So I've kind of for a little while now been posting stuff on social media about mental health to an extent, but not like in a really, not like in a kind of a deep and specific way. It's more like um, general kind of like my thoughts and my feelings. And so I do coaching with men. I do coaching with men and trying to help them get over the blocks and barriers that they have in their life. Um, and I kind of discuss that on like TikToks and I discuss that on kind of Instagram. And just give a little insight into some of the issues and some of the kind of problems that I encounter and in my own personal life within communication, within relationships, within self-esteem, self-worth, that kind of thing. So I kind of come from that perspective. And I remember Hamza messaged me and kind of saw what I was doing and talked about a little bit about what he was doing and his background and stuff and what he's involved in. Um, and for me, I was just like, yeah, like that's something to be involved in. Um, I think it's really important that as Muslims, we're able to do a couple of things. One, I think it's really important that we can play a role within like wider institutions and networks that we don't necessarily have ownership over, and we can play a certain kind of role within that. And then I think it's really important as well, and I think this is where you are going, what you're saying, that we have spaces actually that we have ownership over, and we have some kind of um, freedom and some kind of authority over, where it is an exclusive space of ours, and we can shape that, and we can be quite um, unapologetic within that space.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the mental health and emotional well-being issues that people encounter, I think a lot of the time, one of the problems is that they don't feel like they truly have a space or they have a support network or mechanism in place that they can be wholly transparent within or has a genuine, legitimate understanding of them and their position and any kind of wider culture or context or baggage that comes with that. Um, and that's something that pops up in the work that I do, that I have conversations with people, and it's like, because I don't put myself out there as like I'm Mr. Muslim. Like I am a Muslim, alhamdulillah, but I don't put myself out there like I'm an Islamic coach or I'm a coach for reverts or I'm a coach for men in general. That's my general approach. However, obviously my own life experiences, my own beliefs, my own morals, my own rationale, my own world perspective clearly shape what I do and the way in which I communicate with people, right? And I think for some people, that's really important that they're able to relate to somebody, but also it's not necessarily from a place like I'm a sheikh and I'm giving them specific Islamic advice but at the same time, I'm not coming from that clinical perspective, which just says like, it doesn't have any of the morals or boundaries or criteria that we have.
Mm.
So it doesn't come from the same like worldview or the same perspective, or it doesn't even really acknowledge or appreciate any nuance within that. So let's say, for example, I'm talking with somebody and they have real problems within their family, and they have problems with the way they deal with their parents or their wife or whatever, whatever, like in in a secular realm, the advice is not going to have any acknowledgement or appreciation for what we believe. So the way in which that conversation happens is going to be entirely different. So yeah, I just think it's really important without me going too far off before we come back. I think it's really important that we actually hold and create um, spaces, and we'll keep using this phrase spaces, and we have resources and we have networks and we have communication that is entirely our own. Because yeah, I just think it's important, and also it removes a lot of barriers that would have been barriers otherwise, or it takes away certain complications where we're talking to somebody in the capacity of therapy, and they don't really know where we're coming from. And so I think, yeah, I just think it's really important to own our own space and have some shared mutual understanding, even if that's not entirely uniform, right? Um, so yeah, when I saw the work that was being done, and I know things are on kind of the male side of things in an early stage, but I just like the look of it, and I thought let's get involved really. So that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
Love that, love that, love that. What's
Okay.
some of the aims and things you'd like to implement within this space that we're in? Not as in this space as in within us three,
Mm.
in the Muslim Lived Experience Network.
I think what I would like to be involved in is opening up a wider conversation about what what kind of support would actually be genuinely beneficial for people. Um, and I think I know a big part of your like personal mission and journey is about kind of like um knowing that there is a coping system and there's a mechanism and there's a strategy and there's the alarm bells go off at the right time so that people can kind of catch themselves before they fall. I
Yes.
think I think to be involved in something that again does similar. So we're not creating like a promise of something that we're unable to fulfill, but we're part of a support. We're part of a wider support that is there not to not to explicitly advise or anything, but could help signpost and could just be part of really somebody. Because I think what happens, if I'm completely honest, is when people are, and without, this is like a huge generalization, right? But when people are on that slide, it is a very isolating place, and it's an
Mm,
incredibly lonely place, and it's an incredibly dark place, and it's a place where you slide and you slide and you slide, and there's very little often in place to kind of slow you up on the way, or you know nudge you back up. And I just think in terms of aims of anything I'd want to be part of, and maybe this sounds all very, very, very loose, but I would be want to be part of some of those buffers and some of those bumpers that can help to stop a person sliding off quite so quick and maybe have an opportunity to catch themselves. Um, Obviously, when things are very medically severe, that's a different conversation potentially. But if there was something more in place, maybe people wouldn't necessarily reach that point on occasion. So, yeah, even to what you quoted, ultimately, if you can aid one person, right? If you can support one person, that's huge. And I think it's easy to not really acknowledge that, but actually, just by us having the honesty and the vulnerability and the courage to like speak and share what we're thinking and feeling and been through and who we are and what we are, that in and of itself is going to open more conversations. And that in and of itself is going to be, my hope is somebody comes across this or something else we're doing or whatever. And, there's something within it that they can resonate with and just not be as alone as they thought they were.
no, no.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
In addition to that last point you said, I second that. I feel like it's about, for me anyway, it's about almost trying to give the power back to the people and the community.
Mm,
Um, I feel the system and the infrastructure either takes too much from the people by force or makes, can I word it, or puts people in a space of forced help where the system becomes a crutch to them,
mm,
you know? So by educating, having open, honest, vulnerable conversations where people can be informed, it's about putting people in spaces of prevention or assistance, you
mm.
know? Um, that way we get some of the power back, some of the control. And not to say it's a battle between the two, but it's imbalanced. And by being on both perspectives as a patient, prisoner, and a professional, well, free, a patient, prisoner, and a professional, the empathy is always going to be from the perspective of the people of the community. Um, we're losing when it comes to helping one another due to
Mm.
different elements like lack of empathy and compassion for one another, and then how the system deals with people of ethnic minorities, Muslims, asylum seekers, refugees. Um, and it's hard to see. It's hard to watch. Um, and it can be patronizing at times. And
That
like I said,
that's made me think of something as well about for me it's a like there's an element about like being active in some capacity, not being passive. And I think I think there's something within the mentality of the Muslims at times where we are kind of um we don't really have our own agency. We don't really, things are done to us and we feel that and we mention that, but we don't necessarily um physically overcome that in some way. And I guess there's an element and it's not to claim to be like a role model or whatever, but I think with people like us sharing our own experience and sharing our own story and it shows like there's another side. Like you don't have to kind of you can come back from things, you have capacity, you have ability, yeah, sorry to I just that
oh no, fair, fair. And yeah, I think you're right. Um, yeah, especially for men, it's about showing that we can have open, honest, vulnerable conversations. It's showing that just us three here, we don't go back 10 plus years. We haven't known each other for a long time and been able to build a strong, deep bond before we be able to have some serious conversations and even just talk like this in general. But this is what's key. These are the things that are going to change the narrative and dilute the stigmas and stereotypes and showing that it's about community, it's about brotherhood, it's about humanity, it's about coming together, you know. And without this, we're going to continue to lose this battle.
Mm,
So this is the first step, the main step, and in my opinion, the most important step. Um, the level of stigma and stereotype for men in general is so high that a lot of the time men don't even show up anywhere.
mm,
You
mm,
know, never mind speak out. I have sisters and people's mothers and wives messaging me on behalf of their husbands and brothers and sons because the stigma in men is so high to reach out that they're at breaking point, but they still can't find it within themselves to ask for help. As I said,
mm.
a lot of the time, most time, men are forced help. We don't seek help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And maybe also part of that is that what they perceive to be help is something that they don't feel they're able to, you know, even engage with.
And it's seen as not a strength, it's seen as a weakness.
Mm.
To speak is seen as a weakness. This is something that has been put upon men from beginning of time. You know, men are supposed to be physically strong, mentally strong, and speaking is a weakness. Um, being vulnerable is a weakness. Being open is a weakness. Being honest is a weakness, and being emotional is a weakness. There is no balance from the perspective of society and what's been taught and put upon
Mm.
men. And in the climate that we're in now, this is what's leading to a lot of psychotic episodes in the community. You know, um,
I think it's quite interesting because we've kind of had this thing, like you said, where we're now learning that we're not learning, we've learned that actually being vulnerable and being open and honest and talking about these things and how we feel is actually like a weakness. But then when you actually go back, it's like in Islamic history, it's like the Sahaba and everyone, they were very close. They very much shared all these things. They were very much vulnerable with each other,
uh,
very much close, very much had that brotherhood. But now we've kind of adopted these other values. When I kind of step back and look at it, I'm kind of thinking, oh, well, actually, we adopted these Western values of, men should be strong, the thinking of the household, and we can never kind of show these emotions and vulnerability is a weakness, and to actually suppress everything, which,
mm.
you know, what's that going to do? You suppress a lot of your problems and then expect them never to catch up to yourself. That's just not immune. What's the word? It's not irresponsible. It's what's the
It's
word?
unrealistic and not logical.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you know where that comes from?
I feel like it's a movement away from kind of core Islamic values and core kind of not even Islamic values, just kind of more of just a kind of a push towards Western ideologies of like, oh, this is how we should act, and this is how we shouldn't act, and this is what's okay to say, and this is what's okay not to say.
Mm.
Uh, because not only have they kind of made it a thing where you shouldn't say this, it's actually taboo. You shouldn't really even be talking about these things because it's like, oh,
Exactly.
Do you
it's
think that? Do you think that's true of the wider like? Do you think that's true of kind of like the mentality? Like this is like a huge generalization, like the general mentality of like the UK, or do you think that's something that the Muslim community within the UK, where they've tried to blend two things unsuccessfully, they have their own then unique problem, which means they don't find the help in-house, but they don't then access.
I think two things can coexist at the same time,
Mm,
which then makes a problem like this more complex, more political. Um, I think it's wider than the UK. I think it's wider than the Muslim community in the UK. Um,
mm.
I think it's a men issue in general
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and across the whole of the West. Um, I think a lot of it is subconscious seeds. A lot of it is programming.
Mm,
A lot of it is also culture. A lot of it's especially even on the Islamic side, a lot of those initial traits and fundamentals and foundation have been lost through the generation of being in the West, you know, and a lot of it comes through to where your time is spent and being caught up in the system. You've got to
mm,
look at little things like how we're brought up and where our time is spent in the West. For example, here, you go to school from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m., give or take, you get an hour to get home. Your parents more than likely working two jobs. They get in after 5. You go to bed by 8, 9 o'clock. You're with your parents 3 hours a day. Where are they implementing any foundations and fundamental rules compared to the system and your friendship circle and your negative deprived area, which is planting subconscious seeds to you? You're
mm.
already set up to fail. Never mind the elements of trauma, PTSD, things that you're seeing, negative things that impacted you, and you being a victim or an oppressor. And that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, 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 100%. I think that's a conversation that doesn't. I don't think we even get that far. We don't even. I think we don't have that acknowledgement of trauma and just how far and how deep the trauma goes and how much behavior we see is so heavily entrenched in the trauma and is a response to the trauma. And I think a lot of, particularly if you look at young people, so obviously a lot of my experience has been working in schools in like a pastoral capacity. in the context of kind of inner city Birmingham, um, predominantly Asian area. Um, and so much of the behavior, like that was kind of my question about looking at our context and kind of thinking about the crossover of different factors and within a demographic, like where influence comes from and how those things interplay. Because I feel like people really try to hold on to what they perceive to be their cultural values and their religious values, but in actuality, there's a real like confusion. There's a real sort of there's like an inferiority and superiority complex taking place at the same time in certain communities that then exacerbates the problem. And then on this line of trauma, because there's no, back to your point about stigma, because there's no real open conversation and no acknowledgement of trauma, the trauma then shows itself and manifests itself in a lot of just how people are trying to present themselves.
Yeah.
But it is this very fine facade that is so brittle and so fragile. But eh, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's something there. There's something there.
No, I hear you. I guess even like time and how it's perceived
mm,
and how it's put on a plate for us. Everything's compact, everything's very fast paced. We're in a pressure cooker. It's very claustrophobic. Everyone has a lot to do. Everyone's got a lot on their back. Everyone's got a lot on their shoulders. People find it difficult to remaneuver things, um, to make time for things. You know, oh, I'm
mm,
too busy. I haven't got the time for that. But we all have the same 24 hours, and if you take time to reflect, you'll figure out that there are times to make things work, and there are time to implement things that you need to do, want to do, and choose to do.
mm,
Uh,
It's quite interesting because, like you said, you need that time to reflect. My personal experience is people, there's two types of people. Like you said, there's ones that this world is kind of meant to kind of overwork and overrun us. We don't have that time to reflect. And then there's kind of others where they don't want to reflect. They really don't want to reflect. And I see that a lot in kind of the younger generations in terms of kind of always needing that some sort of stimulation, whether it's your phone, whether it's I need my friends to be around me, I want something. And although that looks like a good guy, it's like, oh, my social support, my friends, but it's like a bit of a distraction. I just don't want to be alone, kind of left with my thoughts. I don't want to think about these things deeply. And I find a lot of people don't actually like to think about the situation in their
mm,
life, what's happened to them in the past, what's happened to them in the future. And that's why we're seeing another kind of, obviously, there's a million other reasons why, but we're seeing a kind of increase in people engaging in these kind of destructive behaviors, or even reckless behaviors, just anything but kind of having that moment to themselves. And it was quite interesting as well. I think I saw something online where someone was saying that actually a lot of people, it was an interesting take on like smoking, but it was like a lot of people kind of like smoking and find smoking quite peaceful is because it's the one point in their day where they're actually sitting there to take a deep in breath in and actually focusing on their breath and taking that, time to actually do that.
mm.
It was just like an interesting take because I was like, oh, that is true. Because now we come with all these kind of new ways of mindfulness and breathing and box breathing and all this stuff to focus on your breath and take that minute for yourself. And yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting take on it all.
I back to the point you're saying around the younger generation not taking as much time to reflect. Um, yeah, I think the biggest point in change and transition is taking some ownership and accountability. Never mind how minute. Um, at the same time, not growing up in their generation and being around before the internet. That's their things that were pushed onto them.
mm,
You know, that's their way of being forced to be occupied, that was subconsciously put on them. The internet was there. It wasn't something that they decided to do or chose to do. It was this is the era that they've come up in. That's their norm, you know. I don't know, an example for me coming home from school and I was allowed to play out of my estate.
Mm.
Kids nowadays don't need to do that because they can be in their house and be on live and just or play on a computer and talk to people in different countries and do all three at the same time: stream, play a computer game, and be on live on a social media app. So they don't need to leave the house if they don't want to, and they'll be on that for hours at a time. You know, does that have an impact on their mental health? Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's overstimulation, isn't there? I think
of course it is,
there's
but
just
at
a
the same time,
constant.
regarding speaking and not having that reflective time for themselves or being nervous to be alone. Remember, everybody's route to recovery is individual,
Mm,
and when you're in a dark space, being alone with your thoughts is a scary space, and I can speak on that firsthand.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and it's one of the causes of a lot of men's. It's a contributing factor to a lot of the reasons why a lot of men commit suicide
Mm,
because they use other things to distract them or stimulate them. And if they haven't been prepped, aware, or have information or know how to manage going through that reflective space or dealing with those thoughts on their own, that first time is their last time, unfortunately.
mm,
And I think in the younger generation, because everything's even still so, it's on fast forward.
yeah, yeah.
I could only imagine how that daunting moment would be for them because I remember how it was for me.
Mm, mm,
You know, that first time of being on your own with your thoughts, it's a scary space.
mm.
And that's even more reason why conversations like this need to take place. Because sometimes people just need a space to vent or have an open steered conversation. So it's a safe space.
Mm.
A lot of the time, you on your own with dark thoughts and dealing with all different elements of trauma, this, that, and the third. You taking that time to reflect on your own is not necessarily the best space to do it for the first time.
With no support and no structure and no, yeah, 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 yeah. No, I hear that.
It can overwhelm you to end up you doing something harmful to yourself
Mm.
because you can't take it and now you don't have to stop it because you put yourself in that space now. You're in that headspace. You're here now. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
turn
yeah,
back
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. And it just spirals and spirals and spirals. Yeah, 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 yeah.
That leads a lot of the time to self-harming,
Mm,
suicide, or randomly trying drugs,
mm, mm,
alcohol, or something because now they just need to stop. How do I stop this? I can't stop this now.
yeah.
I've put myself here and I can't stop it. And that's something to be mindful of, especially for the younger generation. Look at the this balloon epidemic we're going through right
Mm,
now.
I understand. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's quite interesting because from people I know who's kind of used the kind of laughing gas and like balloons or whatever you want to call it, a lot of the people kind of the sensation that they kind of like the most and rank like, oh, this is the most pleasurable I get from it is that idea of everything feels a bit like everything goes a bit dark, everything goes a bit quiet. It's like a moment of
Mm,
peace. And whenever someone says it to me in my head, I'm just all the kind of like, mental health professional things are like
mm,
flagging in my brain.
Mm,
Or like,
of course.
you want a moment of peace. You want that things to stop, like you were saying, Hamza. Like you just want kind of that voice to silence because you have maybe got into that space where you've now reflected and now all the thoughts have come out. And once it's Pandora's box, now you've opened it. You can't close it. You cannot close it. You haven't been taught how to deal with it. No one, your family, your school. You don't know the internet. You don't know how to navigate mental health services. So you have no skills. You don't know where to get the skills. You're not confident in using any skills. You know, you
And they're unaware of, as you said, it's like a jack in the box. They're unaware of what's going to come out of that box because they haven't faced
mm,
anything. They could be 16 years old, dealing with trauma from 4 or 5, and all of a sudden dealing with a backlog that's just happened to present itself to them right now. By one trigger that they may have thought that was something from happening last week, but then it's now giving them the space to go back, 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 and unfortunately, they're not in a space of controlling, managing, or dealing with
mm,
one thing
mm.
at a time, or how to focus on one thing at a time and put the rest to the back
Or
burner.
even where to go with any of that information. That's this. Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's a lot, you know. It's a lot. It's a
Mm.
lot. But as I said, in my opinion, this is the first phase of doing that because a lot of the time, I feel like these conversations need to be done in a controlled environment because unfortunately, the level of stigma and stereotyping men and now young boys. I don't even like to just say men anyway men anymore because I feel like we're discriminating the young boys who this is affecting in the same manner because
Mm.
they're the ones now who are reaping the taking on the repercussions of subconscious seeds, which is why they don't talk freely even so young, you know. And if we don't create a space where they can feel comfortable to come and talk either, then reflective
There's
spaces
a
that get take
consequence. Yeah.
reflect yeah reflective spaces get taken on that get taken place on their own without awareness or informative information can then go left, you know. And these are the sad realities. I like to call myself a logical man. um I like to look at things from different perspectives and different angles, and I always try to look at it from the other side. And when I do that, it can be quite scary. And yeah, it's about identifying problems quickly, but being solution focused, you know. And yeah, we have to be realistic and logical. Otherwise, we're doing what everyone else is doing, which is just brushing everything under the carpet. That's not
Mm.
where change is going to happen.
Yeah.
100%.
I didn't state myself for video purposes, so I'll do that quickly.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask. So who are you, bro?
um, so yeah, Muslim name Hamza, um, government name Simon Baptiste. I'm a Reva. I've been Muslim 10 years. Alhamdulillah. Um, I'm currently a peer support worker, due to transition into a new role shortly, inshallah. I've been working under the NHS for 4.5 years for a forensic mental health team. I'm the first of my kind. And I've been fortunate to do a lot of stuff outside of that. As over the years, I realized that I'm a bit of a unicorn regarding the lived experience that I have. And when I say the lived experience that I have, not meaning specifically just that, meaning that there's a million people with my background and story,
Mm, mm,
but I'm a unicorn in the aspect of the field that I work in, and being a person that's gone through that journey and come back to work in a field where part of his triggers can come from. Unfortunately, a lot of people who make it through the systems don't come back to tell their story once at all. Never mind to do it day in day out, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and work in these spaces and work with people who, when they know that they've been in those dark places,
mm,
it's not the norm, and that's why where I've realized my strength and my value. Also, I'm a very passionate speaker because it hits hard for me, and I feel this is my calling. Um, until Allah Subhanahu wa Taala shows me any differently. Um, yeah, I'm here to fly the flag, change the narrative, dilute the stigmas and the stereotypes. As I said, I'm realistic and very logical, and understand that systemic racism is not something that we're going to be able to erase, and the mental health system and the prison system we're not going to be able to erase. The oppression we're not going to be able to erase, but to give some of the power back to the people and the community, to inform people, to prepare people and put people in the space of prevention and assistance. That's definitely something I can do and be impactful in. And that I'm giving my all, you know. I stand on Qadar, Sabah, and Tawakkul, and I'm about intention, dua, and action. And that's how I move forward.
I would say you're a
mm.
passionate speaker as well. Like, I hate when people talk about things and it's just like, I feel like there's a gun to your head and you're being forced.
That's the other thing. Back to like earlier, we were talking about, services and resources and media and things that people can actually engage with and relate to. I feel like a huge problem is um I think that, and that's why I kind of asked about like the wider society, and I can only really use the context of here because here is where we are and here's what we know about. But I feel like the wider society is very much interested in mental health and well-being. I
Mm,
don't necessarily think the approach is the right one or the most helpful one because I feel like there's a spectrum and we've gone from there to there.
mm,
And now I feel, if I'm completely honest, and what I'm saying maybe is controversial, and what I'm saying is maybe not um, a view shared by everyone within this context or anyone who then comes to listen to this. But like, I feel like there's a mistake at the moment that we want to kind of overdiagnose. We want to celebrate. We want to the whole kind of like inclusivity vibe. Like there's good within it, but the way in which it then actually takes place and what it kind of leads to. And this is another thing like I see in the youth. I see a thing where it's not that they've never heard of depression. It's not that they don't know about suicide and self-harm. It's not that they aren't aware of um, issues with mental health or issues to do with neurodivergence or issues to do with behavioral problems or whatever the case may be. It's a thing where we've almost got to this point where we want to have labels and identities and we want to kind of like dish them out,
yeah.
but that in and of itself doesn't really do a lot tangibly. And and that's where I think the Muslims and certain demographics and whatever find themselves in a place where they're kind of confused because they can kind of see maybe that that doesn't make sense or work, but then they aren't in tune enough with themselves to really know what is our way and methodology of dealing with those issues in society, even though we have solutions for everything. And so back to this thing of we navigate within this weird space that is an inferiority and a superiority that interplay. And then I think me, like as a convert to Islam, as a revert to Islam, I'm in my own little weird scenario again, where like I don't at times really feel, how do I word this one? I don't feel, I don't necessarily feel seen or feel inclined towards the quote unquote Muslim community. But then I know that my views and my values and my worldview and my perspective is at odds with the dominant narrative in the society. And so once again, I'm in no man's land. And so then once again, when I have issues and problems, and this is the case in my own story of like some of my real deep, dark episodes were when I was at a point where I didn't feel ultimately respected by a particular institution that I was involved in. I didn't feel understood. I didn't feel seen. But then also, I think we've at times got this other thing within the Muslim community of acting upon a pretense where we kind of want to be on our best behavior, which comes again from a good place, but it means that we're unable to show vulnerability within those contexts or within those circles. So again, a man is stuck because there's maybe a system that wants to offer him a kind of support, but that kind of support doesn't really see him for who he is. And then what should be his people don't there's all of that going on.
That comes with a lot of politics, though, brother. And then you've
Mm,
got to remember, there's a strength in being aware of your own stigmas and stereotypes. So, for example, you saying Muslims a lot of time have to be on their best behavior.
mm, mm,
That's a lot. Some of the time, shall we say, that's because we're aware of the stigmas and stereotypes that comes with being Muslim
mm,
and how things can be portrayed or taken out of context if your behavior is like somebody else's who may not be Muslim.
mm,
This is where certain privileges come from for people of other races or other spaces or other societal classes.
mm, mm,
Um, Unfortunately, we're all been put into boxes. Hence, that comes with the high rate of diagnosis. Um, Is it a good thing? No. Does it identify people? I guess. Is that fair? No. Is there anything we can really do about that? I'd say no. Um, so how would I move around it? By making people aware of the boxes that they're put in, by being aware of the stigmas and stereotypes and the labels that you're given by systems, by society, and how to utilize those in times of need, make them your strength when needed. And if they are a weakness, be aware of that. So you're aware of your weakness and it can't be used against you. Um, regarding the boxes, and I'll give you an example. So I'm a black male Muslim revert with a criminal conviction for being to prison
Tick, tick,
and,
tick,
and a
tick.
mental health history by being sectioned. If I'm having a debate in a clinical teams meeting with a forensic consultant psychiatrist who is a middle class white woman and decides to get defensive and shout or talk in a manner that is unprofessional, am I allowed to return to respond in the same energy as she has? Or would that be seen from your perspective as a Muslim behaving? Could that be blown out of proportion based on my stigma, stereotypes, and the boxes that I'm in? But then would that be seen as a strength, me being behaved Muslim? Wouldn't that be seen as a strength because now I'm aware of my stigma, stereotypes, and the boxes that I'm in and how it could be portrayed if I responded with the same by mirroring
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what is being approached with me. So this is why awareness and perspective is key a lot of the time. Because unfortunately, if you're aware of your position, you're aware of the boxes that you've been put in, you're aware of your own stigma, stereotypes, and labels that have been put on you, it's a space of strength because you can protect yourself. And that's what's key. Because then that puts you in a space of prevention. Is it fair? No, but we can't live in
No, no, it
we
wasn't.
don't live in a land of fair. We got to live in a land of logic and reality. So if someone, so if so for the example that I gave, if that was happening to me, I can't now say this is not fair. So for me to return and respond by shouting back and being rude back and expecting it to be seen as now balanced, that's not logical and realistic. That's me being naive and delusional to the
No,
fact
100%.
of my own stigmas, stereotypes, labels, and boxes that I'm putting. And if that got blown out of proportion, I should not be shocked. So now what I do is be aware of those labels, be aware of those stigmas and stereotypes, and be aware of those boxes that in, which now gives me a strength. Because now I'm putting myself in a space of prevention, which then saves me a lot of
Aggro.
aggro and being in a problematic
Yeah.
situation, you know? And that's being mindful. That's being cautious. That's me knowing me. That's me being aware. Is it frustrating that I've had to bite my lip in a scenario where I shouldn't have to? Is it unfair that I've had to bite my lip in a situation that I've not had to? Is it not fair that I don't, that I may not even receive an apology for something like that? But at the same time, it's logical and realistic.
Yeah, you're not surprised by it.
Hamza, I've got a question. So how did you kind of get to this point? Because I feel like for a lot of people, they kind of don't see the kind of stigmas and biases that are attached to them, or they do see it, but they don't see it as a problem because a lot of the people are kind of raised in situations like myself. I went to an all brown Muslim boys' school, and a lot of them were kind of didn't see the labels because they weren't put in situations where those kind of labels were evident. It was kind of like you're surrounded by people who have the exact same kind of labels as themselves, so it's never really a problem. So is there a way, because you're in these environments where you're coming to terms and you're becoming really aware and mindful of them, is it something that helped you become highlight these a bit more so you're able to kind of recognize them?
All right. So as I said, I identify problems quickly, but I try to be solution driven. So speaking from a logical and realistic perspective, before us coming together and being on this boat that we're on together and flying this flag together, it always goes back to the same things, unfortunately. Men are not Men don't seek help, we're forced help. I found reflection in prison. I was forced in that space to take the time out to look at my situation. I was forced help with my mental health because I got arrested in the community and I was sectioned under 136 by the police. So I was forced medication, where I was able to understand and identify with a lot of these things was by reading books by Dean, by going on a self-development journey, by realizing how much of a product of my environment I was. Unfortunately, it took even longer to realize the subconscious seeds that were planted on me by my environment. Knowing that I now need to reprogram my mind to a lot of things where I thought was my way of thinking, but it wasn't. It was put on me, and I
Mm.
wasn't even aware of it. So I identified all those problems, but at the same time, I was forced to do that. And when I say I was forced to do that, I was forced in a space to have that time to reflect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got it.
Mm, mm, mm.
So moving forward to help people who are in those same spaces, but to prevent them from being forced, it's about helping them to identify them and making them be aware, because then that puts them in a space of strength, prevention, or being able to remove themselves from a problematic situation. Hence why I responded to Yahya as I did by giving that example.
And I'm gonna come back to something because um I understand the direction you've gone. When I was talking about the behavior of the Muslims, I was talking about in-house,
Mm,
not so much the need to have a perspective and a self-awareness when we come to approach the wider community or a professional setting or that, like yourself, I'm painfully aware of how things can, and the countless examples where that exact scenario you give of there's some kind of meeting and you're in a situation with other people who look and sound and live a different life than yourself, and they have a complete lack awareness of you, but you have a complete awareness of them and of yourself. And therefore, you know how to measure your communication, you know when to pull back, you know how to deliver the message. I was trying to talk more about, and I didn't make it very clear. I think I think it comes from a really well-meaning place, and it comes from wanting to conceal sin, and it comes from wanting to rely on Allah, and it comes from all these things. But I think sometimes we make our interactions as Muslims very superficial and quite formal at times. And because of that, back to a space not existing, like how many masajid do you go to where you feel like, and this is, I think we do need to call out problems within ourselves.
yeah.
How many masajid do you go to? And I know you're a bit more involved in some places that are a little bit more active. How many masajid do you go to? And there is something in the English language for young people. There's something, there is a social, like there's a social element. There's anything beyond like arrive, pray the prayer and dip.
Yeah.
And because of that, our relationships with and our brotherhood and everything, yes, there's a deep bond and connection that exists because we believe in Allah. And there's a deep bond and connection because inshallah we're upon the sunnah and we you know we have a shared view and a shared aim and a shared goal and everything else. But it can be quite two-dimensional and it can be very, you know,
I'm
beyond.
gonna give you some pushback on that, Aki, as my brother, my beloved brother. So for me, yeah, I used to think like that,
Mm,
and I changed my perspective because, as I said, please don't take no offense if I repeat myself a lot
no, 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 no.
regarding identifying problems quickly but being solution driven. So when my mindset used to be like that, I've been in the field 4.5 years. When I first got into the field, the first masjid that I found only spoke in Arabic.
Mm,
I was
mm,
going there for a month, and I was like, why am I coming here? I'm praying the salah. I'm not benefiting nothing from the Quran, especially on Jummah. But
mm,
when I Monday to Friday, I go to the masjid every day. Like I pray Zura in the masjid. I make sure I take my lunch break at Zura and I go to the masjid to the point where I'm known in that masjid. The uncles allow me to play in the front row, and that's me. But regarding it always being in Arabic for Jummah, I said this is not beneficial for me now. So then I find the masjid that does both.
mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So that's one thing. The other element is going into masjids and finding spaces or identifying things that are not taking place there. So that comes to perspective
And
and
what am I doing, right?
yes, and identifying a problem but coming up with a solution.
Mm.
So you said I'm a little bit active in these spaces. The only reason is because I identified these problems and I thought, what can I do about it as a solution? And that's me coming in there and talking. So if I go into a masjid and I don't understand why they don't have this or going on, don't have that going on, I'm going to hang around after. And then I'm going to find out who I need to speak to. And I'm going to ask them what they do have going on. And if it isn't one of the things that I'm suggesting, then I'm going to suggest it. And if they don't have the
Mm.
capacity or the time to fulfill that, how can I be involved to fulfill that? Because then now it's upon me to do it.
Yeah,
Because if
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pointing the finger at them to identify the problem, there's still three fingers pointing back at me.
No, 100%. No,
Accountability,
I'm not trying to not
accountability,
take.
ownership, and change.
Mm,
And we do that
mm.
quickly. That's how I do it now. That's my thought process. Identify the problem. What's my accountability of it? What's my ownership for it? And how can I make the change? And that's the once you do that and you train your mind to work like that at all times, you're always gonna have an answer because your mind goes into creative space. If you
No,
identify a
100%.
problem and then you ask yourself, what's your ownership in this? What's your accountability in this? The change will be there. You by the
Mm.
time you've done that, you're gonna have ideas for the change naturally. So even look,
And that's why
so even
we're having this conversation, right?
exactly,
But
but trying to
I'm just, this is more me just, it's not, this is not me absolving responsibility over that, the specific, but it's about my general view. When I look at the
yes,
picture of where we are and what
yes,
we're trying to work with,
yeah,
again, back to having to be realistic,
yeah.
me and you, we're not in every masjid up and down the country.
So, soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. But I'm just saying, overall, my experience as a Muslim who's been a Muslim for quite some time now
Mm,
is like we got some problems, you know, and I do think it's important that we can't, you're right, if I identify a problem, what am I then going to propose? 100%. But I think we do have to say there are some problems.
1,000,000%, totally agree with you.
And I think sometimes we can kind of like paste over all of that and kind of say like, oh, the system's really bad and life in the UK is really bad, and which again I'm not negating,
Mm,
but back to solution based, I think it can put us in this inactive kind of victim mindset, which is not what you're an example of at all. But I think again, as a wider picture, if this conversation, if there was more people in this room now, as there hopefully will be, inshallah, I feel like a lot of people feel in and of themselves powerless. And so you're showing exactly, well, how do I on a personal level take accountability? And again, that's why the three of us want to have these conversations.
I've
But I
been that
think,
though. Sorry to cut. I have been that. I have
yeah,
been
yeah, yeah,
at that
yeah.
place, at that space where I felt self pity. I did point at the world and didn't look at the other three fingers
Mm,
pointing at
mm,
me.
mm,
I felt like it was me against the world. I felt like it was all on me and why me, and this isn't happening and isn't happening, and there
mm.
isn't this option or that option, and these should be the solutions because they've done this to me and whatnot, whatnot. Yeah, I've definitely felt like that. I'll own that full handedly, and I guess that's why I'm even double down on myself now
Yeah,
even
yeah,
more
yeah.
if I get into a space of identifying a problem and I don't have any option for it because
Mm,
I can't do that because for me I'm playing catch up, you know. Same thing you said earlier regarding not claiming to be a pious man or the Muslim, like I'm not a role model and I aim to be a pious man, inshallah.
sure.
I'm a man who's felt a lot of tests in his life,
Mm,
but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped me identify the lessons in those. And by placing me on this self-development journey, I've also been able to identify the lessons through those. So I'm
mm.
here to share, inform, and teach. Because
No,
even in
100%.
Islam, you're supposed to learn and you're supposed to teach,
100%.
you know? And that's how we grow our community,
Mm,
you know? Um, and that's how we do better and be better. And that's the journey and that's the path I'm on. You know,
mm.
I don't want to be seen as this, that, or the third, or be put here, there, or elsewhere, because we're all gonna have our battles, we're all gonna fall short, and we're all gonna commit sin, and we're all gonna have our slip ups. Don't hold me accountable for those. I will be held accountable.
Yeah, yeah,
Focus on what I'm putting forward. Focus on the change that I'm trying to make. Let's focus on what we're trying to collaboratively work together towards. While doing that, remain thoughtful and mindful of the elements of compassion and empathy regarding our shortcomings and help us turn those weaknesses into strengths because we all have them.
100%.
And I think that's what we're missing as humans in general, and then more so the Muslim community. We're quick to tell someone about haram that they're doing wrong.
There we
We're
go.
quick to be judgeful and mindful.
Mm.
But it wouldn't feel nice if it was the other
Don't
way.
do this, but where's the alternative?
Yeah. No. No.
No, 100%.
I think that does kind of align with kind of the network's kind of goal and mission. I know there's been talks about like implementing things, in-person things in mosques and stuff like that. Like I know Hamza, you kind of gave that little talk, in Lewisham Mosque and stuff like that. But then, there's other things that we could be providing, like maybe courses on certain things or different talks or having these in spaces where people who would not be accessing this online, maybe some of the older adult generations, who are still involved, but kind of the stigma is more ingrained and they don't have that, you know, any of these spaces or really know how to access these spaces can kind of then start to access and still kind of get. Um, so it is kind of in line of what I guess we all three kind of want to come together and start to do and contribute towards. Because you're right, there is kind of, I mean, you're both right. There's kind of things in mosques where there's some mosques that they have, they don't provide much for the community. It's just kind of like a space to come pray and leave. And then there's other mosques where they do quite a lot of community engagement. They have a lot of things for the youth. There are a lot of adults. They do things for older adults. I've seen as well. They have like chai sessions for older adults who are over 70, which I think is quite sweet. Um, and there's that gap in mental health, there's that gap in kind of well-being, there's that gap in um well just that in itself. They do lots of things like maybe a grappling course or I mean a grappling session or like a Islamic talk about something, but they do lack that. And that is a gap that we all kind of see and we kind of want to fill some way or provide something or in a very sustainable way. Because, like you said, we can't really be in every mosque all the time. Um, Ideally, want to kind of put something out there or do something that actually there's that kind of layer of support, there's that reassurance for these people. Because I think at the end of the day, it's really important for someone to know that they're not the only one to do this. Because go through what they are going through because most times everyone is going through the same thing. It's just that no one wants to talk about it. And if one person kind of talks about it, people then are like, oh, actually, that's me too. And oh, that's me too. And then someone else in the corner is like, oh, well, actually, that's me too. But we like to be saying this. And then someone else is, and it's like a kind of a knock-on effect. That's,
Inshallah.
inshallah, the knock-on effect
That's,
we should be having throughout the whole thing.
love that. That's the way you worded that there. Yeah, love that. Because that's how I see things. We
Yeah.
can't get around the country right now. So we're using the internet for a positive and beneficial space of,
100%.
of hopes, inshallah, that it does the domino effect. But in my head, long term, I'm going to go to all of these masjids around the country and I'm going to go there in person. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify those problems quickly. I'm going to take my ownership, my accountability, and I'm going to suggest the change. And I'm going to leave that there because that's the seed I'm going to plant. And with the intention of someone who wants to make that change also, it's going to hold that flag with me. They'll do it there. And how we will stay connected, we'll be doing it online because I'm going to move on to the next one now. But that seed's been set. That plant will grow there.
Yeah.
And that community will nurture that plant to make sure it grows.
Mhm.
And then that way I can continue and I can take that flag to the next masjid. And that's my aim. So then by the time I've gone around once, I don't need to go around again. We can just now communicate via online. Because it's just about touching base. Yeah, is the soil good? Have you watered the plant? Is it getting good sunlight? How is it growing? It'd just be about updates and checking in, touching base.
100%. 100%.